Good morning, you lovely people at Legend. I've been invited by Jane to come and help her today, Jane from Boudica Wheels, to help her with her presentation. And I'm sure many of you were thinking of me, the Grim Reaper, as a legend. But now you know I'm not. And I know it is your policy to ask your visitors if they would like to join your chapter. But I just have to wonder, how many clients would you actually like to refer to me? Paul, how many clients with your leads would you give to me, I wonder?
Probably about 18 an hour.
So, at this point, over to Jane from Boudica Wheels, who will give you, strangely enough, 8 reasons why you wouldn't need to make a will, because nobody ever does. Over 60% of the population in this country do not have a will, and of the remaining ones who do have a will, most of them are out of date and of no use. So here are the reasons why you might not want to bother making a will. Firstly, you're more than happy to die intestate and let somebody else decide who's going to get all that money you've spent and saved over the years. And if it means that your long-term partner gets nothing, you're sure that distant relative you've never even met, except at the odd occasion, will do the right thing and look after them, won't they? And the second reason, why bother appointing executors? What a lot of hard work to find somebody who's willing to deal with your will after they've met me. Might not be responsible, whoever gets appointed by the court, but that's not your worry, because you're spending time with me. And the third thing, you don't mind, do you? Who's going to look after your children when you've gone? If nobody's appointed by the guardians, why worry? At last resort, social services will come and do the job, and we all know how much time they've got to make sure your children end up with the right people looking after them. And let's face it, you're not worried about who gets what. Your money may go to somebody you haven't had a relationship with for years, but they are the next in the line under the intestacy rules, and they get the bulk of it. And if that means the rest of your family have to start making moves to get that money back and to have it apportioned correctly, that's going to cost them a lot of money. Fifthly, and let's remember, you don't really worry about the funeral you're going to have. Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? And that can be a very big issue. Very recently, there was a case in court which had been rumbling for years, a very sad case, where there was an argument between the parents over their son, whether he was to be cremated or buried. And during that time, and it did last for about 5 years, neither happened. And it cost them a lot of money. And unfortunately, the lad who is concerned, he was under 18, so he couldn't make a will. But can you imagine waiting 5 years with a court case to find out, do we bury or do we cremate him? How awful is that? Then 6, it's said, and I think we'll all confirm, there are 3 circumstances in life: birth, death, and taxes. You don't get a choice about any of them. And if you haven't made proper provision in your will with estate planning, you will find that the taxman is a really enthusiastic beneficiary. He'll be after your money, trust me. And 7, you've always given to charities because you're open-hearted. If you haven't made anything in your will, tough luck, they don't get a penny, whatever your wishes would have been. And the last one, trust. Trust who? I'm not talking about who you trust, I'm talking about the trust. And I would say at the moment, trusts are getting a bit of a bad name. If you've got children and they're under 18, you will need a trust for their money to be looked after for them. If you've got somebody in the family who's vulnerable, you will need a trust to protect them. But there's also trusts out there which are being pushed forward by a lot of solicitors to protect your estate and save you money. And you have to look at that very carefully, because a lot of them are finding to be absolutely useless and actually costing you anything. So you need to be sure that if you're having a trust put in place, A, it's for the right reasons, and B, it's actually going to work. So to finish, you only get one attempt at having your will done properly in the end. It doesn't matter how many wills you have made, but when you come to meet my friend, the Grim Reaper, that's it. There is no comeback, there's no action replay, that's it. What's in your will be counted. And if your will is not drafted properly, there's something wrong with it, it could be made invalid, and then we're on to the intestacy rules, and that doesn't really work well for anybody. And that is it. Any questions? Okay, Jo.
Yeah, my question is, when somebody dies, how do you know if they have a will or not?
Hopefully, and usually, they will have told their nearest and dearest that they have made a will, usually. So you know they made the will. The problem is finding that will, because very often you know they've got a will, and I had this with 2 clients recently who came to me and said, my will's a bit old, I need to have a new one. And I said, right, let's look at your previous will, and neither of them could find the will. And that's the real problem. You know they've made a will, where the heck have they put it? And of course, they're no longer around to find it. There are ways to store the will. There's the National Will Register, you can store it with them. There are certain probate solicitors who will offer to save it for free. But again, you've got to know where it is. And usually the best thing is to tell your executors. And my practice is to do several copies of the signed will and say to people, give it to your executors so that when you do pass on, they at least have a copy of the will, which can then be put into action.
I've got a question for the Grim Reaper.
Yes.
The Grim Reaper never gets a holiday, but if he did, where would be his perfect destination?
Oh, well, I have to say he's thought about this one. His perfect destination would be the Dead Sea.
Jane, I've got a question. What is the oddest thing you've ever seen in a will?
I didn't actually see it, but it came online where somebody left to a very close relative, I can't remember if it was the son or the nephew, the contents of their fridge. And the reason for that was when they looked at the fridge, they found £10,000 in cash stashed inside it. And they were trying to do it to reduce the income tax, the inheritance tax liability. But of course, when it comes to probate, you have to start signing things and saying that this is a true reflection. And if they hadn't declared it, they would have possibly been up for fraud.
And what can make a will invalid?
All sorts of things. You can mess up what you've put in it. For example, people will put something like, I leave my brooch with so many diamonds or whatever design to my daughter. And in the next paragraph, they'll put, I leave all my jewellery to my cousin or my sister. And the 2 paragraphs are incompatible. One of the worst things is when it comes to signing. A lot of people know if you're a beneficiary, you cannot sign as a witness to the will. And if you do, you are instantly disinherited. What people often don't realise is neither can the marriage partner or civil partner be of a beneficiary, be a witness to a will. So that is a very common problem, and immediately the will is useless because you've invalidated it. It's not correctly done. Yes.
I have a very determined father-in-law that seems to know everything in the world. I
had one of them.
He believes that if you're married, when you pass away, it doesn't matter if you have a will or not. Everything goes to your missus.
Basically, yes.
That is true.
Unless you've specified otherwise. I mean, if the house is in joint ownership, if it's jointly and severally, it automatically goes to the other partner. The wife's jewellery always remains her own personal property, but probably in the absence of the will, he would take the lot. If it's intestacy rules, he will automatically get the house and he will get the bulk of it, but some of it may be reserved for the children. And it really depends how important it is to him and how much his estate is worth, whether or not he wants it all to go to his partner or whether he wants provision made for his children. And his children could potentially say, hang on, this isn't fair and we should have been left some of it. But then you start talking the costs of instructing solicitors and going to court. And that gets expensive because lawyers are not cheap, as you probably all know.
James, just to reiterate what you said about everyone having a will, we lost our mother-in-law a few years back, and obviously the grief of that was for my wife was horrific and their daughters. And to compound it, she didn't have a will. And it was a short illness, there was no time, and from that, we then obviously had a will for our kids and who's going to look after it, etc. But what you said about putting it somewhere safe and everyone knowing about it, we've done that, everyone knows where it is, but we've also put it in a fireproof sleeve. So even if the house burns down, hopefully, this will survive. And lastly, you smashed that 10 minutes. So.
Yes.
Jane, that was an amazing show and 8 really simple, easy to understand points that everyone got.
Thank you. Charlotte.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So, if someone's got a will and it's to do with where their children go if they die, can family members still challenge that will?
Potentially they can if there's a good reason, but I think they'd have to have a good reason to challenge it. They'd have to show, for whatever reason, perhaps the people who have been appointed as guardians might not be suitable for whatever reason. But, you know, at the end of the day, each will, I mean, this is why we charge so much. You can get the wills online for £49. They do it in minutes. And you just get a generic will. I spend at least an hour and a half to 2 hours with each client going through, checking what they want, checking is that reasonable. And what I'll say to you is, sorry, corny joke here, but one scythe does not fit all.
Jane, how do you handle people that are British, like my parents, but they have property in Ireland?
Then you've got to suggest, you have to include it in it, but it's a bit difficult. The law of the foreign country may apply to their property, and we are lucky in this country in that we have a lot of testamentary freedom. We can choose who we want to leave or not leave our money to. And if there are children and we don't leave money to them for whatever reason, they can make a claim under the current law. There's statute where they can, provisions for dependents law. But in other countries, and I'm not sure what the law is in Ireland, but I know it is true in France and it's true in Cyprus and Greece, you don't have a choice. Whether or not you get on with your children, your estate must be left to them first and foremost, not to your other partner, but to your children. We don't have that in this country. We have testamentary freedom, but you can argue. And basically, you would take advice or tell them to take advice from lawyers in the country where their property is domiciled. Under the EU, you could potentially have it working under our laws if you wanted to and the right provisions were in place. But each case is individual and you have to check who to do it with, basically. So, thank you for listening to me. And I hope you enjoyed.
One last question, sorry. So you spoke about not being able to find the will. So let's assume this was the case. You can't find the will and, you know, the person just passed. What happens to everything the person owns? Sorry.
Well, hopefully somebody will find the will. If not, you might look for a previous copy of the will. If not, if you really can't find anything, intestacy laws kick in. And that's why it's important. It is my practice, let the executors have a copy of the will. They've signed it. They're going to be carrying out your instructions afterwards. So let them have a copy, tell them to keep it in a safe place. You know, and my will is kept with my documentation on my house and some other things so that when I do pop my clogs, my children know exactly where the will is. And that's the best thing. If you're organised, you can keep it somewhere safe. You let your beneficiaries and executors know. And very often it's the case that your beneficiaries, they're your closest family, they'll be your executors as well. So, thank you.